Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. She said, "It's just the street." The tow truck said otherwise. I, 29-year-old female, live in a quiet neighborhood and have, for the most part, gotten along just fine with the people around me. That changed the day I let my mom move in. In 2020, my mom was in a serious car accident that left her with permanent physical disabilities. She can walk short distances with assistance, but stairs, uneven ground, and anything beyond a few dozen feet is incredibly painful for her. When she came to live with me, we did everything by the book to make sure her life was as comfortable and accessible as possible. That included applying through the city to get a designated handicap parking space installed directly in front of our house. This wasn't just slapping a blue paint job on the curb. We went through a long process involving medical documentation, permits, evaluations, and eventually city approval. It took time, energy, and money, but it was absolutely worth it so my mom could have safe, easy access to our home. That should have been the end of it. But then there's her, my neighbor. Let's call her Kathy. Kathy has her own driveway, a perfectly usable one that leads directly to her home. But for some reason, Kathy thinks it's too much of a pain to use her driveway and instead has decided that my mom's legally designated handicap space is just easier for her. She's not disabled, she's not elderly. She's just lazy. The first time she parked there, I assumed maybe she didn't see the sign. I left a polite note under her windshield explaining that it was a handicap space designated for my disabled mother, and I kindly asked her not to park there again. The next day, she was parked there again. When I confronted her, she shrugged and said, "It's just the street, sweetie. I'm not going to block up my driveway if I don't have to. Your house is right beside mine. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. That's what she said about the fact that my mom, who needs a cane to walk and gets winded going more than 20 feet, was forced to struggle up the block because Kathy couldn't be bothered to use her own driveway. I tried again to be reasonable. I explained that my mom had a state-issued handicap placard, that we'd gone through the entire process to get that spot designated, and that it's literally illegal for her to park there. Kathy didn't care. In her mind, she had every right to take the easier option, even if it directly harmed someone else. So things came to a head one afternoon when I returned from grocery shopping with my mom in the passenger seat. As we pulled up to the house, arms full of bags, mom already groaning in pain, I saw Kathy's car, once again parked in our handicap spot. No placard, no shame. I took a deep breath and walked over to her house to give her one last chance to be decent. She opened the door with that kind of attitude that makes you want to backhand someone with a smile. "What the hell do you want?" she snapped. I stayed calm. "Hey, I'm not trying to start a fight, but my mom's in the car and can't walk far. Could you please move your car from the handicap space? It's really hard for her when we have to park far away, especially since the last time she had to walk from halfway down the block." She rolled her eyes and said, "It's a public street, deal with it." Then she slammed the door in my face. That was it. I helped my mom out of the car and into the house, then parked down the block. But the whole time I was boiling inside. I'd been polite. I'd explained, I'd warned her, and she didn't care. So I went inside, sat down, and called the city's non-emergency line. They redirected me to the number for the parking enforcement team, and I explained the situation. The person on the phone confirmed, yes, the handicap spot was registered to my address. Yes, it was illegal for anyone without a valid placard to park there. Yes, they could send someone out. About an hour later, I watched from my window as the tow truck rolled up and, without ceremony, hooked up Kathy's car and drove off. Maybe 10 minutes later, Kathy burst out of her house like a hornet on fire. She screamed across the lawn at me, accusing me of setting her up and ruining her day. I calmly reminded her that parking in a handicapped spot without a placard is a finable offense. I didn't scream, I didn't curse, but I did smile. And that really pissed her off. She screamed even more when I stepped off my porch to talk to the tow truck driver, who was nice enough to hand me the citation slip. Kathy, meanwhile, yelled, "This is my neighborhood. You think owning that house gives you the right to be a bee?" "Actually," I said, yes, I do." Ever since then, Kathy's been careful not to park in front of my house. Funny how a $400 tow bill and a public embarrassment will do that. Petty? Maybe. but I was tired of trying to reason with someone who couldn't be bothered to respect basic decency. My mom now gets out of the car directly in front of the house. She doesn't wince or struggle with every step from down the street, and as far as I'm concerned, that's worth every second of it. Sounds like you went through a lot of work to legally designate that as a handicap spot. What she did was against the law, and you gave her several chances to correct her bad behavior. And our second story. Insurance company canceled me over an expired card. I found a loophole, and now they regret it. The insurance company that my employer uses has a monthly auto-deducted payment that comes from my credit card. I've paid faithfully for 4 years. A few months ago, the company went to run my payment, which declined because my credit card had expired. I had the new credit card, but the payment was attempted before I got around to changing it over. Rather than contact me to let me know that a payment was missed and attempt to get an alternate payment, the insurance company just terminated my coverage and denied all new claims to that account, including my well visits, etc. As soon as I realized what was going on, I called the company customer service number from my card to give them my new card number and reinstate my insurance. After 30 minutes of giving my information again, explaining and re-explaining, and finally just asking for a supervisor because the CSR was reading random selections out of a book or something and wasn't anywhere close to my issue, I discovered it wasn't even the right department. Got transferred to the correct department where the woman rudely told me that due to my incompetence, they terminated my coverage and would not be reinstating it. So I asked when I would be able to re-enroll and was informed that I would not be able to re-enroll until my company entered open enrollment sometime unknown between January and March. I decided to let it go and just wait until then, until I had a necessary medical issue come up where I absolutely needed it. I called again and asked when open enrollment would be. They didn't know, but she mentioned unless you have a major life change exemption, such as family death, marriage/divorce, or loss of previous insurance coverage. Me. Excuse me, ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to report a loss of previous insurance coverage. Not only was my insurance coverage started again, but it was backdated to an effective date of when I started 4 years ago. Guess they'll be paying my bills again then. Edit for clarity. A, I do receive notices from my insurance company by mail, email, regularly. I check both daily and keep a well-organized inbox. I did not receive a notice that my plan was being canceled. Maybe they were supposed to, but they didn't. My notice came when I got a statement following a bill, and it was marked declined due to termination of coverage. B, yes, it's a credit card/debit deduction. Yes, it's perfectly legal, and I've been doing it for 4 years. No, not every company has to do a tax-sheltered payroll deduction for every aspect of the insurance company's plan. I'd be happy to provide a photo of their sign-up page that tells you outright how it's to be paid. C, this insurance company can use a code from the previous coverage or employer certification, since it was the same company that terminated my coverage and they already had me active in their system for other plans, fixed indemnity, dental, vision, life. I didn't have to send anything in, and she was able to copy it all over, put a code in, and reinstate the policy. D, there's always more than what's outside your bubble of experience. Just because your company or state does things a certain way does not mean it's done the same way everywhere. Insurance plans for employers, especially small businesses and employment services, can have different regulations, options, and policies, and state regulations can have impact as well. Please don't think you're being clever by poking holes. The fact that you can only start insurance during a specific 3 to 4 month period is absolutely ridiculous. You know, it didn't used to be that way. And our last story. Karen, the mayor sends his regards. 8 years have passed, but I still remember that incident with special notes of sweet revenge. I've always loved cars. Restoring vintage cars became my life's passion and later my steady source of income. My workshop was located in a small town in Kentucky. I won't name it to avoid unwanted attention. The atmosphere in my garage was always cozy. The smell of paint, gasoline, old leather, and the ringing of metal created a unique melody that delighted my heart every day. But of course, every paradise has at least one person who tries to spoil it. In my case, it was my neighbor Karen, a woman who simply couldn't stand anything I did. She considered my passion to be junk and constantly threatened to call the police or the city council about my vintage cars. She never cared that all the cars were on my own property, under a canopy, out of her sight. One day, I received an exciting order to restore a 1967 Shelby Cobra. The car was in terrible shape, but the owner who contacted me was willing to pay a good sum for its full restoration. The order came from one of my previous customers who had recommended my workshop to someone prominent. I gladly agreed since the Cobra had always been my dream, and jobs of this caliber were both enjoyable and profitable. The Shelby Cobra waited under the canopy hidden behind a brick wall while I finished working on a Chevrolet Bel Air. The car didn't bother anyone and couldn't be accidentally noticed unless someone intentionally peeked behind the wall. Of course, Karen intentionally peeked behind that wall. Her outrage began the first day she noticed the car. She shouted over the fence accusing me of dragging home a pile of scrap metal, ruining the neighborhood's appearance. For several days, she tried convincing me to get rid of the car, even threatening lawsuits and fines. I patiently explained that this was my business and the car was on my private property. Karen didn't listen and continued her attacks relentlessly. Eventually, after yet another argument, she left with the words, "You'll regret this." I didn't pay much attention to her words, and the next day I loaded the Bel Air onto a trailer to deliver it to its happy owner. Driving back, I thought about the Cobra, but upon reaching my workshop, I was stunned. The spot where the car stood was empty. After calling the police, I quickly discovered that my Cobra had been towed by a company from another city, ordered by Karen. She had filed a report to dispose of an abandoned vehicle, paying for it herself. What Karen couldn't have known was that this scrap metal belonged to our town's mayor. The mayor, I'll call him James to protect his identity, was an avid vintage car enthusiast planning to restore the Shelby Cobra as an anniversary gift for his wedding. A serious investigation immediately began. Upon hearing about the mayor's car, the police quickly escalated the case directly under the sheriff's supervision. Soon, the towing company testified that Karen had deliberately deceived them, claiming the car was abandoned and a nuisance to the town. Realizing the trouble she was in, Karen initially tried shifting the blame to me, alleging that I was illegally repairing cars, but the evidence was firmly against her. The court ruled that her actions constituted illegal appropriation of property and fraud, resulting in Karen not only receiving a hefty fine and covering all costs for retrieving the car, but also a brief prison sentence, 2 months, which became a significant lesson for her. We managed to recover the Shelby Cobra, and after several months of meticulous work, it shone like new. Mayor James himself came to collect the car, expressing immense gratitude. At that moment, he revealed that he had chosen my workshop based on the recommendation of his close friend, one of my long-standing customers who often referred me to as acquaintances. Now, when I recall that incident, I can't help but smile. Thanks to Karen, my workshop gained unprecedented popularity among the locals, and now everyone knows that cars here are entirely safe, and justice is always on our side. And Karen, she moved far away and was never seen in our town again. I hope Karen realized that she shouldn't interfere in other people's lives, no matter who they seem to be, because appearances are deceiving. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.